And I guess I was live for all of that. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Lead with LeAnn. It is Monday, obviously, 2 p.m. Pacific time, and this is your definitive guide for exceptional leadership and successful entrepreneurship, airing every week at 2 p.m. Pacific time, exclusively on WinWinWomen.tv. I am your host, LeAnn, and I am thrilled to be sharing this journey with you. Each week on Lead with LeAnn, you'll join me as we delve into the inspiring stories of established leaders and innovative entrepreneurs. We'll uncover just what it takes to build a brand from scratch, lead with authority and grace, and turn business aspirations into tangible successes. Lead with LeAnn is not only about imparting knowledge, it's about creating a space to laugh, to learn, and to leap forward and together in our quest for professional. I am not doing the professional thing today. We're just going live. We're just doing this thing. But your quest for professional and personal growth, whether you're embarking on a new entrepreneurial venture or looking to inject some fresh energy into an existing one, there will always be insights for you here on Lead with LeAnn. So get ready for thought-provoking conversations, enlightening insights, actionable advice, and the support of a network that champions the win-win philosophy. Learn to lead with passion, purpose, and determination right here on Lead with LeAnn. And I am so excited today to welcome Ariel. There I go. Aeoliana, the maestro of podcasting strategy. Not only does she juggle life as a devoted wife and spirited hockey mom, but she also brings a wealth of knowledge from her days as a, wait for it, paralegal. She's on a mission to empower female podcasters, transforming them from strategy novices to masters of their craft with podcasts that not only reach far and wide, but also deeply resonate with their audience. She's here to infuse, move this, scrolling, see, live, her expertise. See, we don't memorize this stuff, y'all. Her expertise and boundless enthusiasm into your podcasting journey, guiding you to create a platform that's not just a show, but a service, a beacon of influence, a source of income, and a catalyst for impact. So get ready to be inspired. Are you there? Come on down. You are the next contestant on The Price is Right.
Dun, 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 dun. Is that the right song? I don't even know.
I have no idea. I've heard that song. I'm sure of it. I'm so sorry for mispronouncing your name right there. I just got blah.
It's okay. It's a lot. There's a lot of vowels in there. It's
There's a lot
fine.
of vowels in that. It must be
Yes.
Hawaiian. Am I right?
Yes. Nope. It's Greek, actually. Yeah.
And have you had the pleasure of going to Greece?
I have not, but it is on my bucket list for sure. And
I
now my son is into Greek mythology too, so I have another in to want to go there again or go there for the first time, I guess.
Oh, wonderful. This is my favorite color, and this is the color of the sea over there. It's like I don't know, I just didn't really think it could really be that blue, but it really is. You got to see
Wow.
it.
Okay. That's
It's very
exciting. I would
fun.
love to go one day just to see
Yeah,
that.
very fun. So, how is the introduction?
The introduction was great. That was like, I loved it. That was very fancy and I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. What did we miss? Tell us more about you, because this show has evolved since I first created it. And originally, we were talking a little bit more about leadership and John Maxwell. And now I've kind of really shifted my focus to really just wanting to dig into my guests and you specifically today. So, what did I miss?
Let's see. You got all the bullet points in. I guess one of the main questions I get is how I went from being a paralegal to podcast strategy. And so I'll give you a little bit of that backstory. So
Yes.
back in 2019, I had a double kidney infection. I was in the hospital, and the firm I was working for decided to let me go while I was in the hospital. So really fast, I had to pivot and figure out what I was going to do. And I ended up taking a job at a construction company, which I'm still employed there now. And I had been listening to podcasts since 2015, 2016, and just for entertainment. I love true crime. And so I did a lot. I was listening to a lot of true crime podcasts. And in 2019, I kind of delved into more of the learning aspect of podcasting. And so I was listening to podcasts about freelance work, VA work. I did some VA work there for a few months. And then I jumped into learning how to do podcast management. I had never really thought about, I listened to a podcast that a VA did actually about how she transitioned into being a podcast manager. And I had never really thought about that as being something you could do. Like I'd never really thought about the back end of a podcast. And so I delved into 2 or 3 different podcasts about podcast management and how to do it, taught myself, learned how to do all the ins and outs of it, did that for about a year, and then started to realize that I was helping my clients not so much in the back end and the editing and all that, but more so in setting their goals, figuring out what success means for them, the strategy, balancing life and their podcast, avoiding the burnout, avoiding the overwhelm, the content creation, things like that. And so in early 2020 or late 2022, early 2023, I transitioned into doing less of the back end and more of the strategy and helping them get, I call it from podcast frazzled to podcast dazzled.
Oh, I love that. That's so clever. And by the way, your flower right behind your head is almost perfectly aligned. Just
Oh, I keep
oh,
moving my
there we
head.
go.
There we
Right
go.
there.
Yeah, I love
You're dazzled.
sunflowers.
You're dazzled
Yes,
with your
I
sunflower.
love sunflowers. It's
Oh,
it's like my thing. I love them.
well, it matches you. You are a bright light for sure. And
Thanks.
isn't it fun how businesses just shift? I mean,
Hmm.
I just said it. My podcast has shifted in the less than a year that I've been doing this. And you shifted your business, and this is a second business for you at this point still.
Hmm.
But what do you find most rewarding about it?
Um, I've always been someone who likes to serve. So I've always been someone that if someone needs help or someone needs guidance or someone needs advice, I love seeing people take things that before they talk to me were really complex and really difficult for them, just having an objective view and showing it to them in a different light kind of like turns a light bulb on in their head where they're like, oh, I never thought of it that way, or I was making this a lot more difficult than it really was, because when you're in the thick of it you really don't think about the ease of things. You're like, I have to get this done. I have all these things I have to do. And when you have someone else look at what you're trying to do, and that other person has like a bird's eye view of what's going on, they're better able to guide you to what you need to do to get everything completed that you want to get done without the overwhelm.
Absolutely. One of my, so in my day job, so to speak, is my company Joyminder, and we have trusted tools, curated connections, business ideas. And the curated connections part is really interesting. Recently have been talking with coaches, because those are the connections that a lot of business owners need.
Hmm.
How do we get the expertise and, like you said, that outside view of what I'm doing in my whatever it is. So there's real estate coaches, there's podcast coaches, there's business coaches. One of the business coaches I'm working with, he really loves working with those people that are too much in. Now you can't avoid that with the podcast, right? But
Yep.
they're too much in their business that they can never really see getting out of their business, or even being able to sell their business at some point. Again, that's not maybe something that podcasters are ever doing anyway, are they?
Not really selling, but definitely taking a second I think for a lot of content creators specifically,
Mhm.
we always think that we have to constantly be doing the content and we can never step back. And what I try to tell my clients is that sometimes you have to step back in order to move forward. You have to step back and reassess your time, reassess, how you're doing it, why you're doing it. Um, and if you don't do that reassessment, you're going to continue like a hamster on a hamster wheel. You're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again because you're not really looking at, is this working? Is this not working? Is this beneficial to me? Is this taking all my energy? Am I putting in more energy than I have? Is this filling me up? Are there other ways of content that I can do in addition to this that maybe will change how my energy output is? And so just taking that step back to look at it in an objective view, or have someone else look at it in an objective view, to where you're able to say, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is my purpose. Now, how can I have it align with my mission, my values, my energy, all of those things coming together?
That sounds like you just described my last year because I haven't taken a step back to revamp the email that you received. It didn't get updated at the point that I decided I wasn't going to necessarily focus quite as much on John Maxwell, that I just really love what I get to do when I get to
Mhm,
talk to individual business owners like yourself. I'd rather spend more time on you and less time reteaching what anybody can get from one of his books.
mhm.
But as it happened, you got the email that did talk about chapter 3 of leadership. And that was talking about growth mindset. And
Yep.
you were kind of like, cool, I like talking about that.
Hmm. Yeah, that's actually one of my, I like to call it my special sauce,
Mm,
because I like to focus on the whole versus just the content creation. Because for so many of us, the content creation comes from who we are, our thoughts, our feelings, our experiences. That's all part of how we create content, whoever we're talking to. It's all encompassed in that. And so I know for me, changing that mindset from a fixed to a growth mindset has been really, really helpful, because when you're in the thick of it and you're in the overwhelm and you're in the burnout, realizing that it's only for a season, it's only for a moment, it doesn't last forever. You're going to get through it. All of us have been through tough times and we've all come out the other side. So it's not forever. So remembering that, you don't have to stay in that overwhelm and that burnout. There is a way out. And so that again goes back to taking a step back when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling burnt out with creating that content. Take a step back, look and see, why do I feel overwhelmed? Is it because I don't know what I really want to talk about? Is it because I chose a topic that maybe in that season I thought was something that I was passionate about, but now in this new season, I'm not as passionate? Or
yeah.
maybe it's the people that you think you should be talking to, that maybe your group or your people are completely different from what you originally envisioned. So, yeah, you need to take a step back.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
it's fun. It's also fun to evolve. Like I'm very comfortable now with what I'm doing with Lead with LeAnn. I love doing what we're doing, this conversation. I have my next favorite question to ask you next, but before that, I'm actually we talked before,
Mhm,
before the show that I'm looking at a new concept, a new format essentially
mhm.
of bringing together kind of a larger group. And it's not leaving this in any way, shape, or form. I want to keep doing this. It's just adding to and kind of expanding the brand.
Yeah.
And so I had a chat with LeAnn AI, you know, LeAnn AI,
Love
and
that. Love that.
talked back and forth on whether or not I should expand the brand or just create a new brand. And we decided to expand it. It's Lead with LeAnn, and then possible, some possible add-on words like connection corner or synergy session or something like that. We haven't
Yeah.
decided. We have not decided.
Yeah, it's always nice to put yourself in the mind of great minds. Great minds think alike. So the more great minds, the better everything ends up being. Collaboration is great, even if it's with ourselves.
Even if it's with ourselves. And it is really, truly a fascinating conversation when you have an AI that is you,
Hmm.
to kind of bounce ideas off. It often clarifies my thoughts well beyond where I could just get to just sitting there and thinking. But here's my question for you.
Okay.
So going back, when you were a child
Hmm.
and your parents may have said, "Go out and play." What did you play?
Um, oh my gosh, this is like going a really long time ago.
Yeah.
Um, when I was little, this is gonna sound hilarious. So when I was little, I actually, for a while, I thought I was gonna be a nun. And then I was gonna be a lawyer until I started working with attorneys, and that changed really fast. Um, and also going through school, like, because I loved criminal law, I loved that aspect of it. But realizing that at some point I may have to, depending on which side of the coin I was in, I may have to defend someone who was guilty or prosecute someone who I knew was innocent.
Mm.
Those were two ends of the spectrum that I just couldn't wrap my head around. I couldn't do either one. I didn't, I couldn't, I just, it wasn't something that I was comfortable with. So I guess for me, being when I was younger, I did a lot of pretend, um, a lot of, imagination things, which
Mhm.
thinking now kind of makes me sad because I'm not like that anymore. I've kind of lost that sense of imagining and wonder, and just kind of been very practical with my thought processes now, as opposed to how I was as a child. So that's probably something that now you've triggered me to go and revisit that part of myself and try to work more on the creative side of me that I haven't really delved into before. So I thank you for that.
It actually is one of my favorite questions. Rarely, but not uncommonly, I get your answer. I do. People, when we touch back to who we were, and I think that pre 7 or 8 time
Hmm.
frame in our lives, who we are and what our calling is, who we're meant to be, showed up. When I was that age, we had my at 7, we moved into a house that my dad had built here in Minnesota, and it overlooked a wetland.
Mm.
And I would stand in that living room with those big windows, relatively, looking out at this wetland. So nobody, but all those reeds were people.
Oh, wow.
And I would be on stage,
Oh.
right? So I think we often do innately know who we are, and if we can connect that, it doesn't have to like be flat on the same thing.
Hmm.
I don't have to be in movies. I don't want to go to Hollywood. I don't, there's a lot of things at my age now that I don't want any longer that I thought I did in my 30s, my
Hmm.
40s, whatever. And yes, I'm in my 50s. um but if we can connect back to that child and to those desires and find ways to integrate it. In fact, I'll encourage you, go back a couple of my shows. I had a couple of lovely ladies. One of them very creative. She actually helps coaches create cards. Happens
Oh.
to be my John Maxwell deck, but she will help people create cards, put them in cute little boxes or decorative little things that match, but she lets them help to create them.
That's
And
awesome.
sh
Yeah,
and
I
for
think.
podcasters too. Like, the thing that we say over and over and over again,
Mhm.
go on a card deck. Isn't that cool?
That is cool. And I know for me, one of the biggest things from a child to now, thinking about it,
Mhm.
is that I thought I could do anything. There wasn't anything, at 7, 8 years old, like someone asks you what you want to be, And like, I'll take my son, for instance, he's 11, and you ask him, what do you want to be? And he'll tell you he wants to be a professional NHL hockey player, and
Yep.
what team's going to draft him and when. And, you know, like, there's no question, there's no doubt. And I think the older we get, the less we believe in ourselves and in our potential, just because the world itself has just, you know, cast a shadow on that. And so, yeah, that's definitely something I'm going to look into, that definitely going back to that innocence and that just straight, this is who I am
Yeah.
belief.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Get
that's
out your
awesome.
coloring crayon. Get out your coloring crayons for real.
Yeah. I do love
A
to
lot of people
color
do. Oh,
still.
well, see, there you
I
go.
do. Yeah, I do.
So, um, I'm going to follow up with that then. You just mentioned, at some point we kind of come across our points where we realize, okay, I quit gymnastics when I was like 8. Like I saw a girl break her arm doing a back handspring, and I was like,
Hmm.
that's not for me. Nope,
Hmm.
I'm out. And yet I think it was in my later 20s, I might have even been pregnant when I realized, oh yeah, that whole going to the Olympics thing, never gonna happen.
Hmm.
Like it took me that long to start. And again, my strengths finder is all about belief and positivity and all the achiever and strategic. And so it took me that long, to my late 20s, maybe early 30s, to start saying, okay, check these things off the will not do list.
Hmm.
How about you? Do you remember a defining moment like that for yourself?
Um, Probably for me, the biggest thing was thinking I was going to be a lawyer,
Mm,
and then working in that environment and seeing just the burnout and the stress and the negativity that comes with it, and the substance abuse, and, you know, like the the alcoholism, and just the broken families, and the fact that a lot of people are in relationships but then they can't sustain the relationships because there's so much work and so much, you know, to keep things going. And at that point I was like, you know, yeah, it would be great, the accolades would be great, but that's not the kind of life I want. I don't want to be tied to a desk or tied to a phone, or, you know, not be able to have relationships, have, you know, children, have, you know, I don't want to have to choose one over the other, you know. And you can always say, yeah, I would never choose one over the other, but at some point you're going to have to, like, that choice is going to be there.
yep,
And, you know, that was probably one of the biggest um shifts in my life, where I decided, no, I'm not, you know. I could have done the corporate America route too. When I was a paralegal, I could have done that. And, you know, I decided that no, I didn't want to have the 80-hour work weeks. I didn't want that. And that was even before I had a child and before I was married. I was like, no, I don't want my life to be me working for the next 80 years for someone else,
right,
and, you know, not having anyone to come home to
right.
and to share anything with.
And
So,
I did some research recently on what the average attorney actually makes, because everybody thinks, oh, attorneys are instantly rich.
mm-mm,
And
no,
not at all. I mean, the
no,
average attorney in America makes about $95,000,
yeah,
which is, I mean, it's better than a teacher anywhere.
yeah,
But yeah, $95,000 isn't buying you the $10 million house on Minnetonka, which is the big lake in Minnesota here. But
hmm,
but many people would feel the pressure to figure out how to do that.
right,
And
yeah,
I don't know
because
what
there's
paralegal pay is relationship to that, but
just think secretary. Yeah, secretary pay for that. Yeah,
mm,
and like you were saying, it's I think the overwhelm and the burnout happens because we're comparing ourselves. So, like, you hear about this attorney making X amount of money, and so you assume coming out, you're going to do the same thing. And like I tell my clients when we're talking about podcasting, I do it, I make sure that they understand what success is for them.
Yeah.
So success for you isn't going to look the same as success for someone who's been podcasting for 10, 12 years, or someone who has a background in broadcasting, or
Mhm.
someone who has a team of people that they're able to market and promote and do all the things. So you can't compare. It's like they always say you can't compare your start to someone else's middle or finish line, because that's you can't compare. It's like apples and oranges. You can't do that.
Right.
And so, that's another thing that I really try to hone in on my clients is to say, if maybe for you just starting out, your definition of success is that you get your podcast published once a month, if that's what your goal is, or that you edit your podcast 15 minutes shorter than the last time you did it. Things like that.
Yeah.
Because we have to stop comparing ourselves to people who are a lot farther along than we are, regardless of what your goals are. Like, you're never going to make it. You're never going to be at that point because you haven't done the things that that person has done. They're farther along than you are.
And from my understanding, I mean, it's kind of like business. You know that the number of people who go into business is not the same number of people who stay in business. The first
Absolutely.
year, second year, and first 5 year attrition is huge for a lot of business owners. They just, it's the analogy of, oh, I love to bake pies. I'm going to go into pie baking business, but you have
Mm-hmm.
no idea all the stuff that you're going to end up being in, really, including marketing and advertising and
Right.
legal and who knows what,
Right.
get your insurance in case your pie ends up poisoning somebody, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so there's so much more involved in running a business than just saying, hey, I'm great at making pies. Likewise, with podcasting, there's a lot of attrition. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot. And I probably have to look this article up again. They might have updated it, but I looked at it in 2022, and only a third of podcasts that were released in 2022, between 2022 and 2023, made it past 10 episodes.
Yeah.
And you don't realize that. Like, people look and they're like, yeah, you go, girl. People look and they're like, but there's so many podcasts. Like, there's so many people talking about what I want to talk about. The market must be saturated. But in reality, it's not, because not very many people make it past those 10 episodes. If you can get past that hurdle, you're already in the top percent of podcasts, whether
What
you know
percent?
it or
What
not.
percent? I need a number. What
Yeah.
percent?
What? Oh, I don't know. I'd have to look that up again.
I'm
But
just
I mean, it's
strategic achiever right here.
even if your numbers don't reflect that, you still are far beyond all those people that quit, because and all it took was you persevering and you continuing to do something that you had a passion for. But you have to know what that passion is in order to get you through that hurdle.
So do you have a process that you kind of bring people through for all of that you're talking about?
So I have a few things. It depends on the person. I have some, worksheets and stuff that I give them so they can figure out their vision, their mission, and their values. And then we work through some SMART goals. I try to have them, not everyone likes to do this, because obviously if you're doing interviews, you don't always want to pre-record. You like to do, some people like to do live. They enjoy that interaction. But batching, if you're able to do it, take time blocks where you focus on one activity at a time,
Hmm.
whether that's recording, whether that's editing, whether that's preparing to publish and scheduling. Our brains tend to take time when we go from one task to another. So we waste a lot of time, a lot of brain energy switching from one task to another. When we focus on one thing at a time, our brain is able to focus on that one task for however long we do it. I think they call it the Pomodoro effect, I think is what it's
Yep.
called, if I'm
Yep.
saying it right.
I think that's
Um, and so you focus all your energy on one thing, and then you take a break. then your brain's able to recharge. And then you take another activity and you focus all your energy on that activity.
Mhm.
And that tends to cause a lot less burnout because your brain is not constantly changing from one thing to another, to another, to another.
All right.
Um,
Makes sense.
yeah. So I like to take my clients into just basically kind of like what you asked me with that question earlier. Just
Mhm.
remember why you started. What was that initial thing? And then keep asking why. Keep asking why questions like, well, why did you do that? Why did you choose that? Why, be like a toddler. Why, why?
Exactly.
And eventually you're going to get to what your core message, what your core mission is. And
Mhm.
it may not be the same thing that you started out with. It may be, but
Yeah,
you have to take the time to ask yourself those questions in
absolutely.
order to know deep down why you're doing what you're doing. And that goes with anything.
Sure. So I've referred to my strengths, and that's based on Strengths Finder. Are you familiar with that at all?
I don't think so.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting. It's Clifton Strengths Finder. I've talked about it on other shows,
Mm-hmm,
but basically, uh, kind of fascinating, really. Clifton, who is they Gallup polls, right?
mm-hmm,
Gallup polls went and they went to a bunch of CEOs and they're like, we want to see if we can predict based like your son, like an 11-year-old. Can we see if an 11-year-old has the potential to be, a CEO someday? And so they tested all these CEOs and they found out that they had like 35 different personality traits and there was no one combination that made them a better. They were all top CEOs, but there was no
wow.
one combination that they all shared in common at all. And
Huh.
so then they started going out to the general population. They said, okay, well, let's check this out. And they found, again, I think it's 35. Um, what's fascinating is I live in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, so
Mm-hmm.
3.5 million people. It's very unlikely that there's more than maybe two other people that have my particular top five personality traits
Wow.
because it's when you do the exponentials on
Mm-hmm.
35 traits. In fact, they say that it's very unlikely that anybody ever in the history of time has the same combination, same thing, same 35.
Wow.
It's that unique. That's how big the number is. And so to actually find people that have one or two traits that are the same as your top five is also not all that common. In fact, in my own family, we don't have anybody with the same one in our top five.
Wow.
Which is fascinating. It's a fascinating way. And when I looked at it and I realized in that my top five, strategic achiever, intellection, belief and positivity, it made sense for how I operate, who I am in the world, how I show up. And it gave me a lot of clues. So I was just curious because some of the things I heard you say, I think I'm kind of guessing at some of your top five. You may have the third one that I have, which is called intellection. It actually doesn't mean we're smart though, sorry. Um, but it does mean that we can kind of see kind of a bigger picture, like we can hear pieces coming in. Does this see if this resonates with you? You'll hear this and you'll hear that, you'll hear this, you'll hear that. Maybe you're in a group setting and you're able to summarize what everybody is saying.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound
Yeah.
familiar?
Yeah. I can do that. I'm very
Yeah.
good at summarizing information. But see, all my stuff comes from human design and knowing my human design.
Okay.
So I'm a projector. And
Okay.
so projectors are guides, they're advisors for others.
Very cool.
So
So
when
what
I learned,
human design is that another form of like personality inventory? I'm not familiar with that.
um, it's so it takes different modalities.
Okay.
So it takes like your the chart, like the astrological charts and your birth chart and all these different things, and it's like a blueprint, and it doesn't really change. It enhances, but it doesn't really change. And so, like in our house, my husband and I are both projectors, but I'm a 5-1. He's a 2-4 or 4-2, something like that. And then my son is a manifester, which is someone who always likes to start new ideas.
Okay.
And it's yeah, it's really cool. I'm going to look into the Clifton, you look into human design, and we'll reconvene.
That sounds like a good plan. Okay, and we are past our half-hour mark. So, and we have guests in our waiting room. So we'd love to interact and have questions. If guests that are here, if you want to, you can put something in the chat.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we're going to end the recording in just a few minutes, just a couple more touch points, and then we will have a private conversation. So anybody on the live streaming service, you will also be cut off. So I'm inviting you to jump over here at winwinwomen.tv. And if you get here before before we end the whole session, you can ask questions. You can interact with us, ask us questions, share your story. We'd love to hear their story, right?
Absolutely. Yes. I'm
So,
intrigued.
yeah, please. So do jump over to winwinwomen.tv. My little flyer will be right at the top. If you're watching the recording, of course, my name is LeAnn Lyon. Come back and watch Lead with LeAnn, 4 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Time every single Monday. But before we go, how would people connect with you? What's the best way for them to get more information about you, about what you do, maybe get your help?
Yep. So the easiest way would be my website. It's got all my socials, my services. I have free resources. I have my blog linked in there. So that is www.topshelfvirtualservices and .com, obviously. And yeah, like I said, it's got free resources in there. It's a little bit about me, my life, my family. I have a blog. I have all the ways that you can work with me. I have, you can sign up if you're thinking about launching a podcast to get on my newsletter and receive my guide to launch your podcast in 8 weeks.
Great.
So those are all the things that are in there. And again, like I said, it's all my socials, my TikTok, my Facebook group, my Instagram, all of the things are on that website.
Perfect. Wonderful, wonderful. Any last bit? Anything else to say or offer at the moment?
No, no, all the stuff is on my website. So any way that I can serve, any way that I can help, whether it's through my free content, paid content, whatever I can help with, however I can guide you, feel free to reach out. I'm always available and ready to help.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here. I enjoyed myself. How about
Thank
you?
you. Thank you.
Good. It was really fun. And I look forward to hearing how you unleash that creativity. Uh,
Yes, I will be working on that as soon as we get off here, trying to figure out where I can be more creative for sure.
Excellent. Well, great. Well, again, this is Lead with LeAnn. We're going to wrap up the recorded portion. Not too late. Come on over to winwinwomen.tv. Technically, I guess it's www.w. No, just kidding. Don't do that. And we'll be back again next week with another amazing, amazing guest. But thank you for being here today. This has been so much fun.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Wonderful. And with that, bye-bye, streaming audience. Come on over.
Bye.
And we lost our get. Let's see. Here we go. So I'll trim the end of this off because I can't actually do that. There we go. Okay.